Are we messing up our children's lives? Good evening, dear parents. Today's episode examines how parents, despite good intentions and efforts, can harm children with lifelong trauma. Our featured speaker today, Fiona Douglas, suggests a way to remedy parental deficits so that all children can experience safer and more secure childhoods. Fiona Douglas is an advocate for greater awareness of child abuse and domestic violence issues. Over the past 10 years, Fiona has supported hundreds of people in crisis in the UK and in China. Most importantly, she has been inspired by the courage of people living in crisis and the power of conversations to change lives. Let's listen to Fiona Douglas.
Was there anything that your parents said or did during your childhood that you wish they hadn't? Was there anything that hurt you, that left a scar you can still feel today? Perhaps you've come to forgive your parents for those moments of weakness, because you know they love you and did their best. Or perhaps you're not sure about their love for you, and you have to live with that uncertainty. Every child is at risk of suffering in this world full of imperfect adults. And childhood scars cut deep, shaping our entire lives. I was speaking with Nana, my 89-year-old grandmother, about this talk. And she started crying, telling me that her parents never told her that they loved her. I didn't point out that the closest she's gotten to saying those words to me has been a lots of love scribbled in birthday cards. Because I know that she loves me. She's just never felt comfortable expressing those words that mean so much to her. Even the best of parents have deficits in their parenting skills. And those deficits cause children to feel unloved. And a lack of parenting education leads to unsafe parenting, which can cause trauma and even death in childhood. In the US, 5 children will die today because they have not received good enough care from their parents. That's 5 children too many, every single day of the year in just that one country. In the UK, it's 1 or 2 children every week. Child abuse and neglect is not an evil that can't be prevented. It's a form of unsafe and uneducated parenting. In China, the leading cause of death among young people is suicide. Children don't just kill themselves because of biochemical imbalance. More often, it's because they feel unloved, unwanted, or unworthy of a place in this world. For too long, parenting skills have been taken for granted, and parenting education has not been properly established. It's time to invest in widespread parenting education to prevent trauma and save children's lives. Over the past 10 years, I've worked with hundreds of children who have been abused, neglected, and traumatized. I started by volunteering as a counsellor for a national children's telephone helpline in the UK. And hearing the cries and screams of children suffering down the phone was more than enough to propel me into making this my career. So I waved goodbye to dreams of working in a glassy office building as an undefined business executive and went back to university to undertake a master's in social work. This qualification led to me working for local government, which meant it was often my duty to take children away from their parents for their safety and put them into the care of approved strangers or children's homes. But for the past 3 years, I've been continuing my social work practice in Shanghai as the director of a child and family therapy service. Here, I don't have the power to take children away from their parents like I did in the UK. But I do have the opportunity to lead a team of child specialists who work with families to improve parenting skills. Working in China has given me much greater insight into the flaws that exist in the UK's system of child protection. And one of the most major issues is that parenting education services are in very short supply. They're reserved for those who most need them. But it's not easy to figure out who is most in need of this support. I believe that it needs to be offered to everyone if we care about keeping every child safe in the UK, in China, and all around the world. Here's why. So let's start by taking a look at just some of the ways in which parents mess up their children. You know, in reality, parenting deficits are as complex and varied as humans are. Your parents had their own unique set of deficits, and now you do too. And that makes spotting the harmful deficits pretty tricky, especially in today's world, in which we've become exceptionally skilled at projecting a perfectly filtered image of our lives on WeChat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so many social media platforms. Because what these projections don't show is the truth, like the fact that we struggle to pay attention to anything other than smart devices. This is Kyra, at 7 years old. And the truth behind this photo is that Kyra didn't make it to her 8th birthday because she died of malnutrition. Some of you might presume that Kyra is from a developing country where children starving to death is a common occurrence. In fact, Kyra was born and raised in the UK, one of the wealthiest countries in the world. You might now be thinking that Kyra must have been from a family with little to no money, unable to put food on the table. This was not the case. Kyra lived in a household with enough money. And when she died, there was a bowl of fruit on the table and cupboards full of food in the kitchen. In fact, the only thing standing in the way of her survival was her parent, her mum, who was overweight and unhappy about it. Kyra's mum was on a diet, and she enforced those food restrictions on her daughter, purposefully using this as a cruel form of discipline with fatal consequences. But it doesn't have to be this way. You know, I've worked with many families in very similar situations, and through intensive parenting training, my colleagues and I have successfully helped them to change their eating and discipline habits. As parents, any of our inner struggles with food, anger, stress, perfectionism can hurt our children, and further education about our child's needs can help us prioritize them. But I am worried that we're becoming so addicted to smart devices that we're becoming more and more blind to our own inner struggles and the inner struggles of our loved ones too. As parents, for example, it's very easy to become blind to the impact of the pressure the fear of failure that our children feel. A few months ago, I was reading a news article about an 18-year-old boy called Xiaofan from Zhongshu province. He'd recently taken the Gaokao exam. Both of his parents had good jobs which required them to stay in Beijing. So they frantically called him on results day, desperate to know his score. So he told them. He scored 470, a brilliant score that would secure him a place at a top university. His parents were so happy, and at the end of the summer, they came home to see him and celebrate. But those celebrations never happened, because Xiaofan killed himself. The truth was, he only scored 170. He had lived with the shame and guilt of his failure all summer, and he couldn't face the consequences of his parents finding out the truth. His parents put pressure on him because they wanted him to have the best life, and the result was no life at all. They loved him, but did they ever tune in to the depth of his fears and the weight of the pressure he was putting on himself? Did they even realize, before it was too late, that their consistent expressions of love, warmth, and support mattered more than anything? In the UK, because many parents are blind to their own deficits, we've created professional roles like mine, focused on spotting those deficits for them, ideally before it's too late. This is baby Peter from London. He was just 17 months old when he was killed by his mum's boyfriend, after suffering 8 months of beatings while his mum stood by. This all happened despite Peter being on an official local government child protection plan and being seen by professionals 60 times within that time period. The trained professionals only saw his mum being good to him, and they believed her lies. The truth is that our parenting is always a reflection of our best self and our worst self. In some ways, Peter's mum was a good parent, but she hid her harmful deficits from the world. You know, I've worked with so many parents like her, and every time, no matter how criminal or horrendous their actions have been, I've seen their love and heartbreak, just such little expression of it. So in summary, we know 3 things, and they are, number 1, it's very hard to distinguish between abusive and non-abusive parents. As a social worker myself, I can testify that it's impossible to know which parents are being honest and which aren't. And I've found that I cannot reliably predict which parents will go on to harm their children tomorrow and which won't. Many parents are blind to their own deficits, and no professional can ever really know what's going on behind closed doors, because we only see what you see, a filtered image. Number 2, systematically removing children from every parent there is ever a suspicion or concern about would constitute a violation of human rights and is not a solution. We already have over 70,000 children currently living in government care in the UK, and most of them are not having a good time. And number 3, parents are people with the potential to learn new skills. No one imagines being a parent who will hurt or hate their child, but it happens. And if being a parent is one of the toughest and riskiest roles that we can take on in society, then why don't we receive any education or training about how to do the job well? The current lack of parenting education leads to unsafe parenting. So who thinks it's time for parents to go back to school? Thank you. Research shows that for children of any age, parenting that is warm, sensitive, and supportive provides the greatest chance of a child developing strong academic abilities, good social skills, and emotional resilience. It's the quality of the relationship between the parent and child that matters. So parents need to be educated about how to discipline and communicate with their child without fracturing that relationship. This means that as a parent, you can give yourself permission to express so much more love and praise than disappointment. And there are strategies you can learn that will help you to discipline out of love and logic, rather than anger and frustration. For government agencies, this is a call to research and implement systems for parenting education. The World Health Organization says that parent guidance programs are proven to reduce violence and significantly improve parenting skills, leading to less behavioral problems in the child and better mental health for their parents. Who likes the sound of that? Through investing in the development of everyone's parenting skills, more children will survive and thrive, and less children will go on to become unstable adults, addicted to violence, drugs, and alcohol. China already has a progressive new family violence law in place, and its success depends on a system of parenting education. And when you think about it, isn't it reasonable to ask for at least the same level of systematic teaching and measuring of competence for parents as there is for drivers on the road? For businesses, service providers, and NGOs in this sector, I recommend for you to provide parent training programs. There is a need and a demand, just like there is for birthing classes and yoga with goats. Parenting skills need to be modeled, learnt, and developed over time with support, feedback, and guidance. And I see and hear firsthand every day parents in China seeking information and training about how to be a better parent and struggling to find a class. Whether you're a parent or not, you're someone's child. So I challenge you today to take a step outside of your comfort zone and express more love or praise than you've ever done before to your child, your parent or grandparent, your partner, or yourself. Whoever you target will have an inner child who needs this, just like my Nana. And it's never too late to start leading a more fulfilling family life. A safe and secure childhood starts with educated parenting. This is a call to action, to take collective responsibility for providing the education and resources needed for every parent and child to have the best possible chance at family life. Thank you.
Part of the explanation for why qualities of parents are often repeated in their offspring is genetic, indicating the power of nature, that is, heredity. But part of the explanation also lies in the impact of the environment in which a child is raised, which is referred to as nurture. The answer to the age-old question of why children often seem so much like their parents probably is both nature and nurture. Both play a role in how children develop. And of course, both of these influences come from a child's parents. It is the environmental piece that parents have much control over. The kind of emotional environment established in the home and the child rearing style used by the parents have a mighty influence on a child's development. Another major mechanism, though, or through which parents impact their children's growth toward maturity, is by the kind of role models they are. This process occurs consciously as well as without awareness on the part of the parent. Nobody is perfect, neither we nor our children. That means that mistakes will be made. What is most important when mistakes are made is the way we handle the situation. When we or our children or someone else makes an error, are we unforgiving or accepting? Do we deal calmly with the situation to resolve it, or do we berate the perpetrator? Do we get angry and look for someone to blame, or do we assess what has gone wrong and consider what can be learned to avoid the repetition? If we make a mistake by doing something that we later regret, we can use that opportunity to show our children how to handle errors and judgment. How? By acknowledging our missteps, accepting responsibility for our part in it, apologizing to any hurt parties, finding ways to make amends, thinking about what we can do next time so we don't repeat the error. These steps are all part of a healthy process of reacting when we mess up. This is the same process we can use if we respond to our children in a way that we later regret. When our children make mistakes, we can let them know that mistakes are opportunities for learning and that nobody is perfect. Help them to go through the steps that I said earlier. Have a forgiving and responsible attitude toward making mistakes. Yes, we may not be perfect, but let us not let our imperfections mess up the lives of our children. May the ties that bind families be with us always. Until next week, this is your host, Toti San Pedro.